Welcome, my achievement hunters and collectible gatherers. This is episode 3 in the Complete Critique series, where I pick apart some of your favorite games to see where they excel, or maybe even where they fail. Today I will be reviewing the second installment in the lively paper-themed RPG series, that is to say, Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. And as usual, this is an analysis and not just a general review, meaning there will be plenty of spoilers ahead. You have been warned. We will be critiquing 8 categories for our flat mustachioed hero. These, of course, being storyline, gameplay, characters, enemies, locations, aesthetic, sound, and content. Without further ado, let's completely critique Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. It could not possibly be called an RPG if it wasn't for an engaging and enticing story. Those without it end up, well, cut out of the picture. Luckily for Thousand-Year Door, it is widely regarded as one of, if not the best in the series story-wise. It is the tale of one plumber who is destined to not only save a princess for the 100th time, but also the world. So what did I think of the Thousand-Year Door's storyline? Well, I think it is safe to say that this game's story is indeed timeless and crafted to near perfection as far as satisfaction goes. Its many chapters vary greatly in their narrative arcs, going from slaying a dragon to a tournament arc to being stranded on a cursed island. Like seriously, this game has so much variation and novelty between each chapter. The prologue along with Chapter 1 and Hooktail's Castle were a great introduction to the game, Chapter 1 being a simple vengeance arc. Chapter 2 was still memorable, but definitely one of the weakest narratively. This is due to a lack of an interesting plot compared to the other chapters. Chapter 3 is amazing as it combines combat and an ongoing mystery into a cohesive and exciting tournament arc that always kept me on the edge of my seat. Chapter 4 slows down a bit, but remains quite intriguing as your identity is stolen right in front of you. Additionally, the pig curse was so far out of left field that I couldn't help but adore this chapter. Chapter 5 is similar to 3 as it kept me engaged from beginning to end. It begins with the impactful history of Bobbery and then a shipwreck that follows a bit after. It then ties up with an unlikely yet comically wholesome friendship with the Pirate King Cortez as you deal with a common enemy. Chapter 6 is arguably the best in my eyes since the mysteries were all stupid fun and most of the character interactions had me smiling most of the time. Then there's Chapter 7, which is probably the worst, unfortunately, since there is far less in its plot than the previous chapters, and it's such a crucial point in the story as well. And Chapter 8 continues this trend of being more gameplay focused than anything resembling story, however, the finale definitely had a satisfying conclusion that I could accept. And yes, I mean that even after including the power of friendship nonsense. Speaking of, I never really had a problem with that type of conclusion. Like, I know some might think it's underwhelming or maybe even poorly written, but I think otherwise. Would I have preferred something else? Well, yeah. But especially within the realm of that trope, I think they pulled it off while still maintaining the hype afterwards. And oh my god, Peach's side content was a great way to introduce bits of lore throughout Mario's adventure. Peach and Tech's interactions were genuinely heartwarming, and I always looked forward to learning more about the stakes Mario was up against. Now, what they didn't pull off was character deaths. I mean, seriously, why is almost every single death in this game randomly retconned in the end? Here's some examples. Koopley being alive defeats Coop's purpose for killing Hooktail in the first place. Prince Mush being revived took away any emotional impact of Jolene's character literally moments after learning her past for the first time. Grotus turning out fine eliminates any weight of his ultimate punishment. And Tech. Oh my god, Tech. I can excuse any of the previous character deaths because it was made for younger people too. But Tech is a goddamn computer! His character is awesome, and his sacrifice actually surprised me all these years later with how well it was built up and sent off. Like, holy shit. At this point, I was half expecting Bobbery's dead wife Scarlet to suddenly come back. Okay, you can probably find narrative reasons for why all these guys ended up surviving, but man, I would have felt a deeper connection to these characters if their arcs weren't just rendered almost meaningless. Even then, in the large scheme of things, these are but minor story choices that barely affect the story as a whole. But then there's Bowser! Notice how I haven't mentioned him yet? Yeah, he actually has more side story content than Peach, but they are all spent on comedic relief. Bowser has always been a goofy guy, but if you're going to shoehorn him into the story, don't make him a surprise boss before the finale. The whole time, the game is building him up like, oh no, Mario's nemesis is also trying to obtain the crystal stars and capture the princess. And then he just ends up getting made fun of over and over and over. Okay, I'm definitely overreacting to these smaller grievances, but someone has to. I just hear a lot, and I mean a lot, of praise for this particular Paper Mario game's story. And I believe it deserves it, to a degree. But I would never go as far to say the story is perfect and actually leaves a little bit to be desired at points. Regardless, I am still on board with saying this Paper Mario delivers a beloved, entertaining, and emotional story. An epic yet conventional plot with only a couple small hiccups along the way, though nothing even remotely bad. I can feel satisfied giving Thousand Year Door a storyline rating of 8 out of 10. Thousand Year Door has one thing that most players want back in a future installment: turn-based combat. Come on, why did they have to take it away? But in all seriousness, this game definitely had the strongest gameplay of all the Paper Marios. Its level up system is simple yet strong. 100 star points equals a level up. This lets you upgrade HP, FP, or BP by a specific amount. HP is health points and FP is your flower points. Flower points can be used to do stronger moves, basically filling the role of mana. Then there is BP, or your badge points, and there are a lot of badges to choose from, varying greatly in utility and damage. However, you can only equip so many at a time, with each requiring a certain amount of BP, meaning you have to manage that carefully. This, along with managing HP so you live longer, or FP so you can use skills more often before running low, is an extremely effective system. There are also special abilities on top of this, obtained through collecting stars at the end of each chapter, each star giving one new ability in battle. These also have a variety of uses, from healing to stat increases to freezing enemies to massive damage dealers. But beware, these moves require SP, or star points, to utilize. Thankfully, you can get these just by battling and appeasing your audience. Alright, the audience. These guys are something. Timing attacks or dodging correctly can build star power, and piling on stylish moves gets you even more. And stylish moves are just extra button prompts that let you do epic backflips and stuff to build hype. And if you want star power quickly, well, you can also just use a turn to appeal, giving a large amount of it at once. Another layer of complexity and options are added once you include partners. There are 7 of these companions, with each having up to 4 abilities. You can even upgrade these partners using an overworld collectible called Shine Sprites, as in the ones from Sunshine. 3 of them are required to power up a partner, and 3 more to ultra power up a partner. These upgrades add HP, attack power, and new skills to your partner. Now, that's already a lot of potential, but let's mix in a couple more things into the pot of possibility. First, there are 2 kinds of guards, normal ones and super guards. The latter negates almost all damage on most attacks and has an impressively small timing window. In other words, I suck at super guarding. But that's besides the point. Outside of battle, you can also get preemptive strikes by attacking in the overworld to get a head start. On top of that, there are multiple food dishes you can cook with varying effects between them. Oh, and while I'm talking about effects, there are tons of items in this game that can heal, kill, or, well, whatever this is. There are also randomized components, with the entire stage being a potential hazard to both you and the enemy. I am even willing to bet that there is something I missed that can change how you decide to act during each turn. I should also mention that this is ignoring the whole enemy aspect of battling, as they have many types of attacks that you must watch out for yourself. And money actually matters in this game. Like, I found myself actually battling for both XP and money. That's wild. And I touched on it briefly, but the overworld in Thousand Year Door is fun to traverse and explore gameplay-wise. You can upgrade both your hammer and boots, giving access to many new areas. Upgrades to your hammer dictate what kinds of blocks you can break, while boots eventually allow you to ground pound and jump super high. Throughout the game, you are additionally cursed by black chests that give you access to new abilities. These allow you to soar through the air, slip through small crevices, roll under obstacles, and float on water. Better yet, your party members each have their own unique overworld abilities as well. Some are obvious, like Bobbery blowing up walls or being able to ride Yoshi, but then there are some rather unique ones, such as Flurry, who can blow away invisible walls, or Vivian, who can hide you under the floor. Whether it's in the heat of battle or exploring the overworld, Thousand Year Door has an incredible amount of options at your disposal. Smooth, fun, and creative, this RPG doesn't believe in limitations. With that, Thousand Year Door gets a perfect gameplay rating of 10 out of 10. This entry in the series definitely has character written all over it, and the people you encounter 100% carry that sentiment. Take people like Luigi, Don Pianta, King K, Pennington, or even Zest T, as they are all great examples of quality side characters. The random citizens making up each town or locale or whatever else have absolutely lovable dialogue, to say the least. I am sure you can walk into any area with interactable NPCs and leave saying, yeah, their dialogue was worth it. You know, none of that useless, boring, or substanceless dialogue that certain games NPCs have. Then there's the main cast. They might be important. Mario's 7 party members vary a bit on how well written their personalities are. You have those at the top such as Bobbery, Vivian, and Goombella, who are phenomenally written in their backstories, narrative arcs, or general personality. Then there are those in the middle who are decently written and have memorable personalities such as Yoshi and Koops. And last are a couple at the bottom who I didn't care about as much at all, being Flurry and Miss Mouse. Even with those last two, I would say they are still okay with distinct personalities, and neither having a noticeably bad character. As for Mario himself, he is, well, Mario, so you kinda get what you expect with him. However, Peach this time around has really made a name for herself, who along with Tech X are some of the best written characters in the game. Don't get it twisted, there are a lot of amazing characters, but these two had so much narrative purpose along with these sweet and wholesome interactions. Tech especially excels for only being a literal supercomputer. How the hell did this guy make me sad during his death? And I know I dogged on Bowser earlier, but regardless of his place in the plot, he is still as comedic and delightful to see as ever. Cammy included, this dastardly duo and their shenanigans were some of the funniest moments this game had. And that compliment is big, considering the sheer amount of side-splitting bits, jokes, and interactions this game had within it. Okay, background NPCs excelled in their roles, and main cast is for the most part amazing, but what about the villains? Well, depends on who you're talking about. The chapter bosses, or those who are not entangled within the overarching story, are great. I mean, Grubba, Dupless, and Cortez are all perfect just the way they are. These guys do not need to be complex, they just need to be notable. Even fucking Hooktail with their fear of crickets, or the Silent Smorgs with their, general existence, are at least interesting. Then we come to the core villains of the game, the people you will face over and over and over again. They're just evil for the sake of being evil. Both Grotus and Shadow Queen are just so painfully generic that I found their underlings, Lord Crump and the Shadow Sisters, to be far more enjoyable. They can be evil, just let them be something else as well. I sorta understand that them being purely evil is the point when compared to the colorful cast of weirdos found elsewhere in the game. I just wish we could have gotten any sort of characterization, background, or proper build-up for the two main threats that loom over this story. Nevertheless, Thousand Year Door has some of the best characters in the franchise. The majority of characters are memorable, worthwhile, and not just generic toads. Even with a couple standouts leaving me a little unsatisfied, Thousand Year Door gets an overall character rating of 9 out of 10. Thousand Year Door has a diverse list of species inhabiting its world. And this isn't true for just characters, but enemies as well. This game has a whopping 134 different enemies to battle with. The enemies in this game make great use of Mario's kit and present you with fulfilling combat. For example, enemies can have spikes, fly, be on fire, make shields, negate damage, change stats, and more, leading to changes in how you approach battle. Not to mention their designs are all stellar, granting us many new species that are not just Mario staples. Plus, even those that are standard have many variants to give them just a little bit of differentiation. Unfortunately though, many of the enemies that do have higher tiers are just palette swaps with increased damage and health. While this is an easy way to fill the enemy roster with minimal effort, am I wrong to say I wish they had an additional move or tactic that made them stand out? Luckily, the bosses did not run into this issue. They are all completely unique aside from a couple outliers, each having their own respective strategies and challenges. And hey, The bosses aren't just normal enemy but bigger this time around. Seriously, I am glad a majority of the bosses are completely unique in design, having nothing in common visually with the normal enemies you encounter. It just makes them feel special and more themed around the chapter. The remake even added 2 new super bosses who present incredible challenges if you fight fair with no cheese strats. Overall, the enemies can be silly, grand, or even downright intimidating. The game's enemy lineup is sizable and diverse, playing greatly off of Mario's personal moveset. And even when considering that many high-tier enemies are just tankier than their standard forms, I still believe the roster deserves an enemy rating of 10 out of 10. Mario's adventure takes him through a ton of distinct locations, and better yet, it deviates from the typical forest, desert, ice, volcano scheme that its platformer counterparts love oh so dearly. Instead of a generic forest, we have the enchanted boggly woods, and there is no desert but rather a tropical island. The ice location is tiny in this game but has a cute Russian aesthetic, and the classic underground is replaced by Rogueport sewers. But that's just the beginning. There is also a floating arena, abandoned train station, moon base, gloomy town, and a foreboding palace of shadows. Though these are just the main locales, with many smaller sub-areas scattered between. And hell yeah, the hub for this game is not another goddamn Toad Town. Rogueport is a charmingly run-down town where there are more criminals than Bowser has castles. And that guy seems to have a lot of castles. Honestly, Rogueport is probably in my top 5 list of favorite hubs ever. This place is so drastically different from any seen before or after in the Mario series. Just a town full of crazy people, thugs, and mafia members. Essentially Detroit. Now that is a hilarious setting for a Mario game. Each area ties in perfectly with the particular story arc being told at that moment, making them all easily recognizable at first glance. They add so much to the experience of the chapters, and I just love them to death. Now, you've seen these worlds, but I should probably mention just how intricately designed they are. Every single room or screen is filled to the brim with stuff. There is no such thing as a useless or empty room in this game unless done on purpose. With the overworld abilities I mentioned earlier, there are plenty of secrets to discover if you're itching to explore. And I'll talk about this soon enough, but oh my goodness are the various areas beautiful to look at in this remake. I mean, they were pleasing to look at before in the original, but geez, this is a whole new level. Before I get too far off topic, however, I can't help but give Thousand Year Door a location rating of 10 out of 10. Alrighty, I'm going to just assume that you have looked at the screen at least once before this section of the review. Like, are we for real? Am I dreaming? We got a remake and it looks this friggin' beautiful? To the people who dislike the paper aesthetic and hate that the remake incorporated more of it, I hear you. But I don't agree with you. Furthermore, let it be known that I did play the original on the GameCube first years ago, but even I can admit that the remake looks objectively better. The revitalized visuals brought a whole new world of enjoyability for me, and I don't think you guys understand. The first major upgrade is in the character expressibility. The characters had emotions in the original, sure, but holy shit, there are so many new and improved sprites that I was impressed. It genuinely made the emotional moments more impactful and gave me all new highs of dopamine. Even in comedic situations, the new expressive models add so much for such a small change. And they didn't stop at Mario, the main cast, or even villains. They made everyone new sprites with their own assortment of expressions. That's a different breed of insanity, and I love it. The other obvious change was, I don't know, everything else. UI facelifted, locations renovated, combat effects looking glorious. And over the course of my playthrough, I didn't notice a single thing that could be considered visually worse in any respect. Now, tracking back to the paper comment from earlier, do people actually hate the modern paper aesthetic, or do they just hate the games associated with it? Maybe some people think there's just too much emphasis on paper? Cause I just can't see how leaning into it visually is inherently a bad thing. To me, the art style looks lovely and unique, having an appeal of its own. Please let me know what you think of the remake's art direction, cause now I'm a little curious. I loved what I saw, and what more can you want? The Thousand Year Door's revamped art style is beautiful, and I found hardly any problems with it. The paperification might bug others, but luckily not me. Suffice to say, this vibrantly crafted world deserves an aesthetic rating of 10 out of 10. I'm just gonna say it, Thousand Year Door has an incredible OST. Area themes are catchy and fitting of the locale while being easily recognizable. Rogueport, for one, has one of the most distinct hub world themes I have ever heard. Then there are bosses with instrumentals emphasizing their personal quirks. X-Nauts have a more techie sounding theme. Rockhawk has an electric guitar along with cheering in the background. Smorgs have an eerie, almost alien theme. And Grubba's theme is intimidating and imposing. And who in their right mind could forget the absolute banger that is the title screen theme? But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Then there are some songs like Farewell Rogueport that just have so much raw emotion and soul behind them. That's right, TTYD in its music, much like every other aspect of the game, had every ounce of love and care poured into it. So how did the remake handle such an outstanding soundtrack? Similarly to the visual changes, Thousand Year Door's entire OST has been largely reimagined. The best way to word it is that the newer songs sound fuller. That is to say, they seemingly have more instruments and musical stuff going on in general. You can definitely see the inspiration from the soundtrack in Origami King, for better or for worse. As remixes, these were truly a breath of fresh air, even if some of them were less favorable than their original counterparts to me. I can't even say I was disappointed with any track since they gave their predecessors an entirely different tone. Was that a little confusing at all? Okay, to get an idea, just have a listen to Rogueport's original and remake versions. As you can hopefully tell, the original has the shady town vibe down to a T. Alternatively, the remastered version makes it sound more adventurous and explosive. This was a trend among the remastered songs, but I love them regardless, although for different reasons. And you want to know something cool? Preference here doesn't matter. There is a badge in the game that you can equip to swap between retro themes and remixes with the click of a button. Such a simple addition that allows players to listen to the new music but switch back if they just aren't feeling it. I guess I should also mention that the remake added plenty of new tracks along with the remastered ones. For instance, partners now have unique themes that match their personalities. Additionally, this game now has my favorite thing ever: dynamic music. Areas with multiple floors such as Rogueport Sewers, the Palace of Shadow, and the Pit of 100 Trials now have different music depending on your depth. The remake created area variations on the classic battle theme as well. Now I no longer have to hear the same exact battle theme for every encounter regardless of where I am. Hooray! Even tear-jerking moments were improved tenfold with the new compositions. Tech's entire sacrifice sequence actually had me on the brink of tears in the remake, and a large part of this is due to the music. His somber yet truly sincere theme pulled me in, told me it's gonna be alright, and pushed me back before an amazing send-off. I hadn't felt this way any of my original playthroughs on the GameCube. Turns out this theme was the missing piece of the puzzle I desperately needed. What we are left with is a soundtrack that reimagines your favorites, creates music that enhances the emotional weight of special moments, and builds on established pieces by making them more dynamic. And what's more, it preserves the integrity of the original OST by giving you the option to select it at any time. I would seriously have a much harder time arguing for a sound rating of anything below 10 out of 10. Thousand Year Door has a vast quantity of content available for the player to engage in. Throughout the main story, there are plenty of collectibles to search for, such as star pieces, shine sprites, and badges. These are hidden all over in a lot of fun locations, making full use of your personal and partner abilities to reach them. Along with badges, there are also logs for recipes and enemy entries. Filling out these 3 logs is not easy and takes a decent amount of time and effort. However, at least you get something for 100% completion in the remake. It isn't much, but you get a badge that turns Mario gold and Luigi appears on the title screen, which is kind of awesome. There are many side activities to engage in as well for the player. One such activity being the ability to help people with their issues through the Trouble Center. A couple of these are comedy gold and were hilarious to witness, but a majority of them are simply fetch quests with some decent at best rewards. Surprisingly enough, one of the troubles actually unlocks a hidden 7th party member, Miss Mouse, which was cool to see for the first time back in the day. But if you are itching for a challenge, well, Thousand Year Door has numerous. At this point, everyone knows about the Pit of 100 Trials, an 100-floor delve into darkness as you face an endless onslaught of foes. Unfortunately though, depending on who you are, the remake kinda lowered the stakes of this challenge. A game over used to instantly result in resetting the entire pit from the beginning, but in the remake you can just retry the battle you died in. It's a fine change that mainly makes it more accessible to casual players, and you could of course just not click retry, so I won't complain too much about it. As mentioned previously, there are also 2 new additional super bosses that the remake added in. These are Prince Mush and Wacka, 2 beings who actually present quite intense battles. Prince Mush can't be beaten without super guarding at least once or twice, and Wacka requires you to do the Pit of 100 Trials a second time. And in addition to a large health pool compared to most enemies, these two super bosses deal crazy amounts of damage in one turn. And if all of that isn't enough fighting, you can also go through the Glitz Pit again if you really want to. I mean, there isn't really much to gain through the championship aside from a neat collectible and money, but it's something I suppose. And I will say that most things listed above can be done before the final boss, so as for post-game content, there isn't really anything you couldn't do before, which is a shame. Overall, collectibles are great fun to gather, and the extra challenges offer difficult battles that much of the main story is devoid of. Even so, the game lacks an actual post-game, and many Trouble Center requests are kinda pointless. On top of that, getting 100% for the 3 logs can be a pain to record the last few entries without doing everything else anyways. While the remake does add a couple more side activities for you to do, I am still inclined to give the game a content rating of 7 out of 10. Well, here are the final ratings for Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door's 8 categories. Guys, I tried. I tried to be as critical as possible with the Thousand Year Door, but still ended up with all these perfect ratings. I feel defeated. I guess there is a reason so many Paper Mario fans want a return to form when a game this banger came out beforehand. It's just a shining example of a near-perfect game in my eyes, doing nearly everything right. Furthermore, the remake did it justice, adding so much while preserving the charm of the original. With that, another game has been completely critiqued. If you enjoy this series, consider subscribing, turning on notifications, and all the other fun algorithm stuffs. It would be 100% appreciated. And please, let me know if there is anything I missed or something you believe should have been rated differently. I would love to hear your thoughts. This has been 100% Hunter, and as always, I hope you follow your instincts and continue the hunt. Until next time, friends.